what's enough is the victims recovering any portion of their savings. So it's a little bit disappointing. It's bittersweet. It's the rest of his life. But I would have liked to have seen the full sentence, definitely. It would have been nice for him to have gotten longer than Madoff. Madoff confessed. Madoff stood up and was, I respect what Madoff did, that he turned around and faced his victims and apologized. And it wasn't until after the proceedings today that Alan Stanford looked at me for the first time and said, "I'm sorry," which kind of contrary to what he said all along until now. So, but then it was followed by, "You need to sue the United States government so to get your money back." So, he refuses to accept blame. I think, in a lot of ways he's shown sociopathic behavior. I mean, his world is about Alan Stanford, and it's not about all of these people who lost their savings. These were just numbers to him, and it was, he looked at reports every day, looking at how many of these numbers, how many of these people gave their life savings and turned it over, and it's really bittersweet. I mean, there's some sort of satisfaction in him spending the rest of his life in jail, and like I said, I hope the former knight doesn't get to see the light of day again. I think at least there's that. It would have been great if he had gotten the maximum sentence. That Alan Stanford said? The talk about all the different investments, and, I had a bank in Venezuela, I had a bank in Panama, I had a yacht, that the receiver has sold these things at a discount. Those aren't the things we were buying. Those aren't that was not in the literature. Those were those are things that were not in the brochures. So it does stand out a little bit, because that's admitting essentially blatant fraud. And for his lawyers to say, the money laundering, it was money laundering. They were money laundering the money so we could invest in the other companies. Well, money laundering is a crime too. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a cautionary tale for investors. We did the due diligence that we possibly could. There's no way to know that someone's going to steal your money. There's the protection that exists for investors when they make investments through brokerage firms in the United States is through SIPC. SIPC has not stood up for the investors in this case. We gave our money to licensed broker-dealers who are members of SIPC. SIPC has fought that. The SEC is fighting its own battle in the district court. We're waiting on a decision there any day now. It would be very difficult to invest again. You never know. You just never know. I mean, we had every assurance possible. My family personally, we hired an attorney to do additional due diligence in addition to looking at the regulators and speaking to FINRA and the SEC. We didn't know what our government knew. And unless investors do know those things, they're not safe. They're not safe making investments. There's no way to ensure that something like Stanford or Madoff would never happen again. There is no way. I can't go back and say that we did anything wrong. The returns weren't impossible. They were decent. They weren't spectacular. There's nothing that, if I could go back and turn back time, there's nothing that would have been a red flag that would have... No, there was nothing. So I can't say that there's any advice that any other investor could have in trying to prevent something like this. Unfortunately, there are criminals. Our money was stolen. It was blatantly stolen. And we did business with a broker-dealer. And the safety net for investors who give their money to broker-dealers is SIPC. And we've battled on that front for more than 3 years. The investors have faced a lot of obstacles in trying to recover anything. Currently, there's a pending decision by the United States District Court in Washington, D.C., where the SEC has filed an application to force SIPC to initiate a liquidation and pay claims for up to $500,000. If that protection, which was, is mandatory for every piece of paper that we were given by Stanford Group Company, it was mandatory by law that they had to have member SIPC on it. So the SEC has taken action in the district court. We're waiting on the court's decision. It's a very unprecedented case for the SEC to have to sue an agency that it oversees. But we're waiting on a decision. That decision could make these investors, 80% of them would be whole. So we hope. Our fate is really in the district court in Washington, D.C. It's in their hands. My name is Angela Shaw, S-H-A-W, and I am the director and founder of the Stanford Victims Coalition. I live in Dallas, Texas.